What's up, y'all? It's DT2 Comics Chat here, and what's my motto? Don't complain, create. Now, just as a disclaimer, of course, I'm going to complain. We all complain about, the parts of our geek world that aren't the way we like them. But I want to focus a little bit more on the second part about creating. So I'm starting a new series today, per the suggestion of some of my incredible tweets on Twitter. I just love my comic tweets on Twitter, I have to tell you. I love their thoughts. I love their comic knowledge. I love their perspectives. They're just an incredible group of people, and I'm very, very proud to know them. So today's new series is called If I Wrote. Okay? So I'm going to be talking about, in this video, if I wrote a TV series about Oa. About Oa. Now, as you know, Oa is the planet that the Guardians live on, and the Guardians are the creators and the protectors of the giant power battery, or batteries, we found out later, that power the Green Lanterns, okay? But there's so many things I would get into if I wrote a TV series about Oa. I'm sure we would have, 3, 4, 5 years, and also let me comment on that. I think you should make a 3 to 5 year plan for a TV show. I think that Breaking Bad did it right. I think if you can make it through 5 seasons and keep your edge and keep your energy and keep surprising people and keep the characters growing organically, I think you've done just fine. And then I think it's time maybe for a spinoff or a different show or whatever. Because almost without exception, most TV shows begin to kind of sputter once you get into season 6. That's not universally true, but it's true more often than not. So my plan would be to tell a story that I could tell with 5 strong seasons. I'd rather have 5 strong seasons than 7 weak ones. That's the thing. So at least that's the way I feel now. So that would be my approach. And then, if you get to the end of your 5th season and things are still hot, you can do like a Better Call Saul thing. There's all kinds of opportunities you have. But it's better to have, each season better than the next and to end really well than to stay on so long. You just produce, weaker episodes and people are just kind of really counting the minutes until you get canceled. I don't think that's the way to go. So if I wrote a TV series called Oa, I would talk about the actual origin of the Guardians. Now, some stories, some of the comic stories, and remember, there's retcons on top of retcons on top of retcons. So if I step on your favorite origin, these stories have been twisted and turned so many times. But some say that the Guardians came from the planet Maltus and they were originally Malthusians, and they moved to Oa and eventually just started calling themselves Oans. And some say they are native Oans. They are indigenous to the planet. That would be something I would explore in depth, because that has a lot to do with the way they think. The Guardians have a very particular worldview, and it's really, really, really narrow, and it's really, 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 really arrogant. So I would want to explore in a TV show exactly how did they get that way, okay? Next, Oa is normally portrayed as kind of a barren planet except for the Green Lantern Corps headquarters or stations. And then also they have the graveyards, but it doesn't seem to be a lot to Oa, and to that I call absolutely chicken crap. No way you have the resources of an entire planet and that's all you do with it. Number one. Number two, that is the Star Trek trap where one species, one race, one whatever, it's a monolith across the planet. So you have all these life forms and they all do the same thing. Yeah, no, they don't. Life on Earth is not like that at all, okay? So it doesn't make any sense, even if we're to buy the police station idea or the police headquarters idea, that you would have the resources of the planet, because that's highly inefficient to have all that real estate and whatever other life forms and resources are available. And that's the way you utilize it, the only way you utilize it. If we were going that way, they would have to do like the Klingons and have this enormous military budget. They'd have to, the Guardians. And so I would explore stuff like that. Also, I realized while making this video that there needs to be a video game by the same people that made the Batman Arkham series, the Rocksteady Studio people. they need to make a video game about Oa and the Green Lanterns. Think about it. Holy cow. And if you have an enormous military budget, then you have to have warmongers. Some people have bloodlust. They like to fight. They like violence. They like to see blood spilled. That's called a warmonger. And when you have an enormous military budget, people like that are always a part of that mix. So I would explore that. I would look at their faith-based initiatives because they have something called the Book of Oa. They definitely believe in demons, which always amazes me how people say that you can't teach religion, but they teach about demons, okay? Everything about demons has to do with malevolent spirits, has to do with the dark side of the spiritual world. No way possible there's a dark side of the spiritual world and there's not a light side. That's ridiculous, okay? So I'm not going to argue with you about that because I don't argue with people about matters of faith, but just from a practical, balanced point of view, I'm not trying to hear somebody say that they have any type of faith, but they just believe in demons. Yeah, no, you don't. There's good side, there's light sides, there's a lot in there. And I actually write about that in a lot of my literature that I write anyway. But there are the demons of Yzmalt that they believe in. Then there's the prophecy of the Blackest Night. And then there's forbidden chapters that, that Abin Sur knew about. So I would really take a deep, headlong dive into their faith-based initiatives because whenever you're dealing with anything with religion, there are always people who they have a practical side. They know how to apply their faith to their daily life. But then there are always fanatics, people that go to an extreme. They go to an extreme and they believe that they're right. And normally people like that are the most dangerous people of all. If they get an idea in their head that their God or their version of God or their pantheon of gods, they have righteousness on their side because normally they become reckless. And quite often they end up becoming a danger to the very life they say that they value. You can't tell me that's not how many dogmatic religious beliefs affect people. And I'm a person of faith, but I definitely examine, different patterns of behavior. And I see this one more often than not. I, in fact, just posted an article on one of my Facebook pages about a couple that made their 15-year-old son go through a 40-day fast, and he died. So they were trying to get a blessing from God, so they decided not to eat for over 30 days, and that 15-year-old was writing notes on social media saying, please help me, I'm starving to death. They let that boy die. See, that's what I mean about, there are always people that take faith-based initiatives to an unhealthy extreme, and I don't think the Guardians would be any exception to that. I think that's part and parcel of why they do what they do. So I would dive into that. No way that all of the Guardians agree. We know that Ganthet always took matters into his own hands, eventually anyway, but there's no way that they all agree, just like the scientists of Krypton. They can't possibly all agree about everything that you're doing. I would also include in their interaction with other planets. I'm a big fan of the sci-fi show Krypton, but also I would want to get Thanagar in there and Rand. Before we even deal with anything on Earth, I would like to see exactly the kind of reputation that the Owens have in the galaxy and the kind of operations that they have. Because again, if you've got a huge military budget, people that have a lot of weapons are always looking for places to use them, okay? I would dive into subjects like AI. Very, very important because you have to deal with, one of my favorite examples is the scene in First Contact, the Star Trek, the Next Generation movie, First Contact, where Data is captured by the Borg Queen, and he begins to ask her a lot of technical questions about the integration of cyborg or bionic parts into flesh. And he gets into the technical specs about the degradation of the signal between a human or a living and organic brain and mechanical or bionic or synthetic parts, because that's legitimate, okay? The way your body operates is your brain sends out signals and it travels through your nervous system and you get nerve impulses, and that's how you can wiggle your fingers. So let's say you lose a hand and you get a bionic hand. How do we translate the the natural electron pulses of your brain into those synthetic parts? And that's actually what happens in sound. That's part of the study of acoustics, because that's what microphones do. Microphones take sound waves, transform them into electronic signals that can then be processed through a mixer and then recorded. And then if you use a computer, there's another transferring process where you can transfer electronic signals into binary, digital ones and zeros, the language that computers read. So you can't tell me that the Guardians wouldn't have that type of tech. They'd have to have something like the Living Power battery and eventually the spectrum colored rings, okay? Which leads us into science versus magic. Because if you think about it, I want you to take a step back and think about the fact that spectrum-based power is really weird. Oh my goodness. Just think about it. You form energy-based rings that tap into the emotional power that's in a color spectrum. Really? What decides that? Okay? And, I know Green Lanterns are fictional, but if you think about it, the moods, if you will, that are associated with the spectral colors are human. They're earth-based. They're the way we think. The Guardians would not think that way. They're not humans. So I would have a lot to say with how they arrive at dealing with spectrum-based power, because again, it's really weird as a concept. And we would have to deal a lot with science versus magic. Now the movie Thor talks about, and Natalie Portman's Jane Foster talks about how, and Star Trek also talks about how technology looks like magic to people that haven't advanced to it yet. So whenever you meet an alien race, their tech, which is normalized to them, looks like magic to you, okay? It's a very common theme in science fiction. So I would dive headlong into that because there's always that great debate among sci-fi circles as to how much of anything is science and how much of anything is magic, if there is such a thing, okay? I would deal with the actual origin of parallax. Oh my goodness, how could you not? How could you not talk about where parallax actually comes from and what he is? I was so disappointed by that Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds, as so many of us were, because there's not one concept in that movie that they did justice. Think about it. They didn't do Hal Jordan justice. They didn't do Abin Sur justice. They didn't do Carol Ferris justice. They didn't do the Green Lantern Corps justice. They most certainly did not do Hector Hammond, completely wasted the incredible Angela Bassett as Amanda Waller, did not do her justice. And Parallax, okay? Too much for one movie. But we would have to dive headlong into Parallax, and there would definitely be a build. There would have to be a reason that Parallax is one of, if not the most feared beings in the galaxy and or the Green Lantern world. See, to me, Parallax would be a lot like the Borg when we first met them. Because when we first met the Borg on Star Trek The Next Generation, Q popped the Enterprise D into the Delta Quadrant, and the Borg became aware of us, and holy cow, from that moment until pretty much they got declawed and ruined and humanized by Hugh and individuality, and then on Voyager, blah, 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 blah. Before all that happened, they were kind of this unstoppable force that everybody was afraid of. It didn't take but one cube to destroy half of the Starfleet ships. And so the Borg were something else, man. They were just really, really unstoppable, and they were relentless. So there would have to be some kind of build with that on my show with Parallax. There would have to be a reason he was feared. There would have to be a reason that Abin Sur would want to imprison him, or he would be the only Green Lantern that could really have any kind of success with him, pointing to his incredible willpower, Or, because why wasn't he destroyed? Can you destroy something like that? So there's so many questions that need to be dealt with there. Okay, then I'd also look at the basic infrastructure of OA, like, what do they eat? What is their waste disposal like? Do they have recreation? Do they have entertainment? And then what are their social relations? Because we know there are female guardians, do they have kids? How many kids do they have? What are their life cycles like? Just so many things. You can't assume a Terran-based system on these alien planets. That makes stuff really, really boring. Like on Krypton, Krypton is a humanoid-based species. They're not human, they're humanoid. They're not human because their cells can translate sunlight and Earth's light of gravity into all those incredible powers. So they're actually not Terrans like we are, but they're humanoid. So the Guardians have a humanoid form. They got the head, the neck, the torso, the arms, the legs, that kind of thing, but they're not humans. And so I would want to dive into all those parts of their life, because you can't assume when you're writing sci-fi that everything would be Terran or human-based, even if you're dealing with a humanoid species. And again, like I said earlier in the video, they could not possibly be the only sentient species on an entire planet. Give me a break, not buying it. I would also deal with ethnic relations, because Lord knows every group of beings have to deal with ethnic differences. Because for some reason, I know what the reason is, but for some reason, we hate each other because of skin color differences and ethnic differences, and we just hate each other. We just hate each other. People hate you just for existing, okay? Just for being, just because they have to share a planet with people that are different from them. They hate you. They hate you, okay? I'm from America. I'm from Chicago. I'm African American and Native American, okay? And people hate you just for being. You don't have to do anything. They hate you just because you exist, because for some reason, they're mad that they have to share the planet with people that are different from them. And somehow they think there aren't enough resources to go around, so they have to kill all the people that look like you because you just freak them out, okay? So I know why that is, but every group of sentient beings has to deal with stuff like that. And you can't tell me the Guardians would be any kind of exception, because they wouldn't be. And finally, well, not finally, but penultimately, we would deal with the Manhunters. Holy cow. Do you know how arrogant you'd have to be the self-appointed cops of the galaxy? Okay, you map out all the quadrants, you map out the stars, the planets, the constellations, the nebulas, the wormholes, and you decide that you're going to police that thing, really? And you're, even if you're living on one of the oldest planets, which they say that Oa is, you decide that you know what's best. So you create a space force that is going to mete out your brand of justice galaxy-wide. Holy cow, there's so many problems inherent in that premise. And again, we're talking about AI with the Manhunters, and eventually the Manhunters turn, because AI in science fiction always turns and decides that, its creators are the problem. That seems to be like an inevitable loop that, your AI created beings are going to turn on you, which, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But it's like they're smart enough to figure out that the creators might be a problem, but they're never smart enough to figure out how to actually get rid of them. So anyway, so I would deal with all that. We would deal with the Manhunters. And see, all of that would lead up to the creation of the Lantern Corps. Now, I would not do like Smallville and have a show called Oa and not have the Green Lantern show up. Okay? I'd never do that. In a million years would I wait until the last episode of the last show and make the audience wait for umpteen of Google years and then not even give you a full-body Superman shot. I would never do that. So I would have a lot of things leading into the creation of the Green Lanterns, but I would probably structure it so we would have at least one full season of the Lantern Corps, because we have to get into recruiting all those different races to be lanterns, because there would be problems with that. There would be problems with being recruited by a ring and being flown to another planet, being ripped away from your family, Do you have a choice as to whether you're a Green Lantern or not? And, and then remember, different races have different lifespans. So who knows how long you're going to live? And would you be willing to give up, your family life and all that kind of stuff? And we would have to get into Hal and Sinestro. We would have to at least begin that relationship so we can see them as brothers. Because in my mind, Hal and Sinestro were brothers. They were best friends, but they were close like brothers. And they had a begrudging respect that was really, really built very strongly. And eventually that gets betrayed, which is why they become such bitter enemies. I would show that progression, at least on some level, because I don't see how you could do a show about Oa and not go there. So that would probably be the entirety of season 5. Again, I would never pull a Smallville and give you 5 minutes of no. We would have to spend some time because, again, there's great drama, great conflict, great ideas there. So these are just some basic ideas about if I wrote a show called Oa. I really like this idea. I'm glad they gave it to me. I'm going to do more things along this line. Might do a part 2 of this, but I'm just going over some basics in terms of how I would outline the show. So who knows, maybe I can pitch this video to somebody at Warner Brothers. Maybe I can, get a job that way because I definitely do want to write on that level. And because I feel like I have, some worthwhile ideas. I feel like I have some things I could really contribute. And I say that because I'm a fan. First and foremost, I'm a fan of comic books and superheroes, and I have been since I was a very small child. I actually learned how to reading comic books, as I'm sure many of you have as well. So there's a lot of things I would like to see done just to help us enjoy these worlds, I don't think my ideas are the be-all, end-all, because nobody's are, but I would definitely like to offer them. So, that's my 2 cents there. So, yeah, that's it for this one, and I will check you out next time. DT2 Comics Chat, out. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell to know when new videos drop.